Steven Universe and all associated images are property of Cartoon Network, Rebecca Sugar, and any and all other respective owners. I don't know them all. All footage in this video has been used for the purpose of critique parody under fair use. Please support the official release. Apologies that there's a bit more ambient noise in this video than what you're used to from me. There's a very mild rainstorm going on outside my house right now. It's been going on all freaking day, and I haven't had a single moment to record audio where it wasn't going on, so unfortunately I have to settle with what I can get. Anyway, welcome to the third theory compilation video here on my channel that I'm only making into a theory compilation video because, just like with last week's theory, I have a theory that I was requested to cover a few different times, and it just isn't quite long enough to justify its own video. So I'm going to be starting off with my take on a couple of very brief theories and then rounding out the video with the requested theory, which has to do with the newest character introduced in the newest episode of the show, as of the time of this video being made, of course. But first, let's talk about Bismuth. Bismuth the episode and Bismuth the character, technically, as this part of the video does deal with something that Bismuth said in the episode Bismuth while vandalizing Steven's house. Bismuth mentions other crystal gems, and you can kind of tell that she's just pulling names off the top of her head, so these are obviously people who were close to her, but not the entire roster of the team. And she mentions Old Crazy Lace, Biggs, and Snowflake. And I've talked about this elsewhere over on my Tumblr and also here, most recently in one of my information update videos, but because I know a lot of you guys don't watch those, I do want to clarify my position once and for all regarding who I think these gems were. Or I guess the better way of saying that would be what these gems were, specifically what real-life gemstones they're based on, as I think we've only seen one of these in the show so far. I know a lot of people misheard Crazy Lace as Crazy Legs when the episode first aired and assumed that maybe it might be a nickname for Centipedal, but on repeat viewings you can clearly hear the soft C sound in Lace, and we know for a fact now that Centipedal was not a crystal gem. She was a homeworld gem who was left behind in the evacuation. And despite the fact that I didn't realize it right away when watching the episode because I'm not a geologist, Crazy Lace, Biggs, and Snowflake do definitely reference actual gemstones. Crazy Lace, agate, assuming that I'm pronouncing agate right, Biggs, jasper, and Snowflake, obsidian. And Bismuth being Bismuth is definitely the kind of person who would give nicknames to her comrades in arms, even if those nicknames are just shortened versions of their regular names. As for which of these gems I believe we've already seen in the series, take another look at this image of Biggs Jasper and tell me, doesn't it remind you of someone? Those wavy patterns, the brownish coloration, kind of reminds me of this quartz gem that Jasper was trying to train as part of her army. Which makes sense. We do know that the vast majority of the corrupted gems are X-crystal gems. We can't say any of this 100% for sure, obviously, but I see absolutely no evidence in series to suggest that the three gems mentioned by Bismuth are not the gem equivalents of the three gemstones pictured here. The mention of Biggs Jasper and the reveal of this character came close enough together that I definitely feel like it was planned, which is actually why I don't think that we've seen either of these other characters before, either as corrupted gems or in gem form. Not only can I not find a single bubbled gem in any of the images of the burning room that seem to match up with these two types of gemstones, but it just makes more sense from a storytelling perspective that these characters would be name dropped and then shown to us close enough together that we would recognize them. Unlike Biggs, who we recognized in retrospect, I think we're going to be expected to recognize these guys when we finally see them. Like I said, this is one I've talked about elsewhere, but now you all know exactly where I stand on this issue. Second, I want to address the theory that Steven is no longer aging, that he's no longer aging naturally, and that he stopped aging at about the age of 8, that he is no longer growing like a regular human. And first of all, I just want to point out that that's kind of ridiculous. We know that Steven has the capacity to age, so why would anyone assume that he isn't aging naturally? Maybe he's aging more slowly than a regular human because he is part gem, but I see no reason to jump to the conclusion that he's not aging at all, as a lot of people have. Especially when at the end of the episode that spawned this theory, Steven's birthday, we see that he's growing facial hair. Increased growth of body hair is one of the first signs that a boy has reached puberty. All we were supposed to take away from the episode is that Steven's a so-called late bloomer. There are plenty of examples of boys who don't age visibly all that much between the ages of 8 or 9 and the ages of 13 or 14. It's a little bit of a stretch to assume that Steven's only now hitting puberty, but it's not so much of a stretch that our first conclusion should be that he stopped aging completely for several years. And as it stands, I have absolute proof that Steven didn't stop aging. slipped casually into the background of an episode, as so many important details in this show are. It's actually an offhand line from the episode Too Short to Ride that proves that I'm right about this. We know that Steven moved into the house that he lives in now, at or after the age of 8, because by the time he walks through that front door of the finished house, he is visually indistinguishable from how he looks now. And yet, after Peridot removes the strips of Velcro from a pair of Steven's shoes to use to attach her new tablet to her arm, we hear Steven clearly state that he outgrew those shoes. One of the side effects of human aging is that even when the rest of our bodies aren't visibly growing, a few parts of our bodies still do. And those body parts include your feet. That means that even while the rest of Steven's body was not visibly changing, he was still aging. There is no other reason why he would have outgrown a pair of shoes. Boom, proven. Moving on to the meat of this video, during which we address the question of whether or not Steven's uncle Andy is related to Greg's old manager Marty. A theory which primarily stems from the fact that the two have very similar forehead shapes and that their hair looks very similar. After all, the episode Gem Harvest did have Andy remove his hat, signifying that the reveal of what his hair looks like must be important, right? It can't just be that he had a hat on and they wanted him to take it off. In all seriousness though, there isn't really any reason to assume that this isn't true offhand. We know from Andy's dialogue in the same episode that Andy kind of lost touch with the whole family at about the same time that Greg would have left, so if another member of the family cut ties, that other member being Marty, Andy may not have even known him, hence why he didn't mention Marty as well. And objectively speaking, the two of them do look very similar, especially old Marty next to Andy. Similar noses, similar foreheads, similar hair. It really feels like something that was intentional. However, I'm skeptical of this idea, as there is no way at this point to prove 100% one way or another. But there is more evidence against than there is for. First of all, the designs of the characters are intentional. This show is a very specific art style, and we haven't seen them draw a whole lot of elderly people. It's just as likely that this is how the crew draws elderly males, as it is that this was some intentional hint that the two are related. If this show included a little bit more visual detail, we might be able to use things like nose shape or attached versus detached earlobes to determine whether or not these two are genetically related, or at least narrow down whether or not they might be. But there just isn't enough detail put into the art style of the show, and in the case of Marty, his ear shape seems to change depending on who's drawing it. And there is one line of dialogue in the episode story for Steven that really makes me think that the two are not actually related. Because of course, if Marty were related to Andy, then he would also be related to Greg, which is why I think a lot of people really like this idea, because if they are related, it would make Steven and Sour Cream cousins, which would be kind of cool, but that's not the point. The specific dialogue that I'm talking about is towards the end of the episode when Greg is talking about wanting to go back and be with Rose. Marty, trying to convince him otherwise, puts down Greg's feelings and overrules his ability to make this decision. To which Greg asks, "Why do you always decide what's important?" And Marty replies, "Because I'm your manager and you're just some spaced out kid." They definitely speak to each other like they're very familiar with one another, but in a moment like that, if they were family, wouldn't you expect Marty to throw that in Greg's face rather than just treating him like any other random kid that Marty happened to pick up as a client? It really seems just from this single exchange that one of three things is true. Either Greg didn't know that he and Marty were related, and Marty didn't want him to know for some reason, neither of them knew that they were related, or they just aren't related at all. And quite frankly, based on the evidence we have at hand, the third seems the most likely. Now, it's perfectly possible that the decision to make Greg and Marty related hadn't been made at the time of this episode, and that's why the dialogue doesn't seem to fit it. But as of right now, I'm just gonna assume that they're not. Doesn't mean I have anything against the theory, I actually quite like it. I'm just too skeptical of it at this point to believe that it's true. But as per usual, guys, I ask, what did you think of these theories? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later. Hey guys, like I said before, sorry about any extra ambient noise present in this video. I mean, I include some music in the background to try to drown that out a little bit, assuming that it doesn't sound terrible in post to do that. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please like it, favorite it, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. And if you know anybody who might enjoy the video, you could always share it with them. I definitely wouldn't mind that. I'm really happy with the way my channel has been expanding over this past year, but I'd really like to keep the momentum going. And at this point, I need your guys' help to do that. Just a real quick announcement, I am going to be taking a couple weeks off towards the end of December. Call it a holiday break, I guess, but I am going to be primarily using that time to try to make some improvements to the channel. I just wanted to let you guys know so you didn't wonder where the videos were those couple of weeks. As of right now, it's going to be the last 2 weeks of December, though that could technically change, I guess. I'll let you guys know if it does. And as per usual, guys, thank you for watching.